Coming up, with the Brooklyn Nets still riding high off their recent winning streak, we go ahead and look from today all the way to the trade deadline and highlight the 11 nationally televised games that will determine the Brooklyn Nets' future this season.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. Over there, you're going to find Doug Norrie, owner-operator of DFSR, for all your daily fantasy sports rankings from DraftKings to FanDuel. He's got you covered. I'm Adam Armbrecht, breaking down the New York Football Giants over on the One Giant podcast with my boy Andy Mack. We thank you for making us your first listen of the day, free on all those great platforms, and let you know today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. And Doug, we're going to get into these nationally televised games as there's been this buzz around players that could be sought after throughout the league. Are the Nets surging towards being a contender once again? There's so much baked into what some people are saying the near future for the Nets. We say, no. We're going to take you all the way to February in the trade deadline and tell you the games that will determine what this team will be.
Yeah, like we've said many times on the podcast before, I think we're on two parallel tracks with the Nets this season. I think, and when you're doing content every day about the team, or you're just a fan, I think you're having to split your brain between two separate ideas. The one is the getting, over the moon rocket ship style to like on the Pacers game when it's all the kids playing, and then it's getting excited about a nice win against the Wizards and just seeing what the team is performing. And then the other part of your brain is working really hard to try to figure out if this team can actually get to the mountaintop, right? Like the goal of any professional organization is to win the championship. That is the goal. Only one team can do it every year. The Nets have some of the requisite pieces to do it. So you're on a game-to-game basis figuring it out, cheering, doing all the stuff we want to do as fans. And at the same time, because the Nets have some of these pieces, doing this other thing, which is, do the Nets have enough that when we get actually to the playoffs, and we get into grueling 7-game series, and when we can, have to make it all the way to the finals, do the Nets have enough? And I think you're right. I think over these next couple of months, there are 11 games on the schedule that we are going to highlight to probably tell the story about where this team stands.
Yeah, and it's funny because across the spectrum of whether you're over on Twitter, whether you're just reading, online features around the league and names that are being brought up. We talked a little bit the other day about John Collins and what that would look like. People are throwing out Chicago as a team that's going to be stripped for parts potentially here. And then you hear about Joe Harris getting brought up in these rumors. Cleveland Cavaliers maybe would be interested, as every team would be, by the way. And Doug and I constantly try to reiterate this. Everybody wants one of the best perimeter shooters in the league to be on their team for playoff runs. And when you hear a name like that, though, the immediate click is, oh, right. Teams are talking about, hey, what do we think? Maybe the Nets will have some pieces here. And the question still comes down to, when are the Nets going to be able to make that final decision on, are we buyers or are we sellers? And a lot of people, including there's some articles over on Nets Daily that were talking about this, how the Nets season could be determined over the next couple of weeks. And the reason why they brought that up, I don't think it's necessarily wrong. I think it might just be a little bit short-sighted, is as we know, they'll play the Toronto Raptors, the Nets will, and then the Detroit Pistons. I was going to say the Detroit Lions. They're firing hot right now in the NFL.
Yeah.
But then, depending on the health of Steph Curry, who had that shoulder injury the other night, Golden State, Milwaukee, and Cleveland. Those three games become really big tests, and we had mentioned those before on previous podcasts. But I don't think that after all this winning that the Nets have been doing of late, those three games alone would determine one way or the other where this team stood, barring getting completely dumpstered by them when being 100% healthy. But as we move down this schedule, those three games right there are going to be nationally televised games. And between now and the trade deadline, there's going to be a total of 11, as you mentioned. Boston Celtics, that'll be on TNT. Phoenix in Phoenix. Golden State again. Philadelphia on ESPN. Knicks, you can debate whether or not that's, that team, that quality, but it's still the crosstown rivalry. The Lakers.
Let's call it 10 games. We went from 11 to 10.
Let's call it 10 games and leave the Knicks out. The Lakers, the Boston Celtics, and then they'll also have the Clippers, and then they will actually play on the trade deadline, but a little bit already have wrapped against the Chicago Bulls. 10 games. To me, those 10 games and how this team performs It doesn't matter what they do between now and then. Only those 10 games really matter about how they're going to look at this team and the choices they're going to make, from low-rung players, pursuing, adding pieces, or marginally maybe being willing to listen on higher profile names on this roster.
Yeah, it is funny. And this is sort of the catch-22 with sports, right? Like, this is because you only can measure yourself against the best, and the league requires you to play the other 82 games, or the full 82 game schedule, thankfully, because watching the Nets in sports is fun. So that's not a complaint. Like, I love that there's 82 games. I wish there was 100. I wish there were more. I love tuning in for these games. I'll stop my life to be able to watch it, to kind of dissect each and every one of them. That being said, like, do we learn a lot from them watching them against the Wizards the other night? No. You don't really learn a lot. It's nice that you learn that they should win the game, and that's where you should be. But yeah, when we're looking at the way the season from a high level and running that championship parallel track that we're talking about, these are the games. I'll throw the Pelicans game in there. That's one that's actually
I meant to mention it. Yeah,
and there's one that we'll just replace that one. We'll replace the Knicks one with the Pelicans one.
Oh, that's not national. Yeah,
that's not a national game, and we're counting the NBA TV games as national games. But it is funny, how the schedule does actually work out that way, because again, the league wants to schedule good teams against other teams for their high profile games. And that, I will say, there's two things that can happen during this time with the other games. If they lost a lot of these other games to many lesser teams, then that would actually functionally change the way that this is kind of playing out.
Right.
The way they're playing now, I don't see that happening. So I'm actually not worried about that. All that much. I'm just saying that is like the one other thing that could happen here, where it's like,
you get dumped by Detroit.
Look, someone gets hurt, like stuff happens, right? Like, all of a sudden it just goes off the rails. I think we've seen enough. Enough stability from the team in the short term to think that actually I'm not so worried about. There was a part of the season last year where we were looking at the schedule being like, oh man, dude, this could get like real hairy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't have that feeling around the team right now. Things change overnight. But yeah, in general, this is really interesting how it sets up, because this will show you, a la when they played Boston the other night, right, about what the team maybe still needs or what they didn't have in that game. I think when it comes to tuning in extra, I think by February, I mean, maybe we'll know way ahead of time, right? But by February 6th, which is the night they play the Clippers, with a trade deadline 3 nights later on February 9th, after playing out those 10 games, I think we'll be able to like really say, like, this team has it or they don't. Yeah. Right. And then the trade deadline will change that a little bit, probably one way or the other. But man, it's really super interesting about how this works, because it's a long time. It's a few months, but I think we know exactly what to look for.
Yeah, well, that's the thing too, the eye test about it, because you mentioned about beating bad teams, right? And you go into those games feeling like, and we said it in post games, well, you hope against the Wizards, it should feel kind of ho-hum, right? As in, you go out, you expect to win. It's never really in doubt. Everyone kind of gets theirs. You're not overly concerned about individual statistics, even in those games. You just want everything to look kind of comfortable. And you're hoping that you get Kevin Durant or key players off the court a little bit sooner, if it's not rest nights for them, as we're hoping they're going to do more of too here. But coming up in a second, it's 25 games between now and the 9th, keeping that Chicago game on the actual deadline day off the table. What does the record need to look like in the 25 total games? What does the record need to look like against these specific high-profile matchups to make you feel like, one, we're ready to keep competing this season at a high level, and two, know if you need to add something or feel like you actually can stand pat with the roster that was constructed this offseason and the moves that Sean Marks made? We'll break that all down coming up here in a second. But first, need to give you what we call just a little public service announcement around the holiday seasons. It can happen so easily. You're out with your friends, you're out with your coworkers, you're putting back a few drinks before you get together with the family over the big holiday weekend, and a few becomes a few too many. And it's time to go from the moment you think of calling for a ride, or no, thinking you're good enough to drive. You live nearby and you can make it home. What are the odds that you get pulled over? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Maybe you could lose your license. Maybe you could lose your job. Maybe you could total your car. Or the worst of all those scenarios, you could do some harm to yourself or someone else out there on the holiday roads. So it only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Play it safe and plan ahead. Get a ride this holiday season. Drive sober or get pulled over.
All right. Make sure also that you are checking out Prize Picks Daily Fantasy Made Easy. Prize Picks has completely solved the daily fantasy space here. all you're doing on Prize Picks is you're doing above and below, more or less on the player projections. We're doing this before Thursday's games start. I'll just give you a little sampling here. Tyler Hero over on Prize Picks, 21.5 points player projection. Let's go above that, baby. That one's an easy one. No Kyle Lowry in this game. Maybe no Bam Adebayo. You're gonna get this afterwards. You're gonna be like, oh my goodness, Tyler Hero above 20 or more than 25.5 points was the easiest call ever. That is what you're getting over on Prize Picks. All you do is you pick 2 to 6 players. You're going to figure out if they're going to score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, and you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections that are available. And Prize Picks is not just basketball, either NBA, NFL, MLB when they come back around, NHL if you're rolling through the hockey season, college football, bowl season coming up. The list is too long to read, but Prize Picks has you covered all the way across. Entries can be made in like 60 seconds or less. Sorry, it's that easy. It was so short that I actually got stumbled over by how short it was. Safe and fast withdrawals, currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks is going to give you $100. If you deposit $50, they're going to give you $50. You can figure out all the other ways that works. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy.
And what else is made easy, Doug, is taking a look at this schedule and doing the old win-loss, and determining where this team's going to be when
the old Mike and the Mad Dog style, Mike and the Mad Dog style, or just Mike solo. That's a win. That's a win. That's
November,
that's a loss.
December 23rd.
That's a loss. That's a win.
But so
a loss. I'm gonna keep doing it. That's a loss. Mike.
No, hold on. Win. Let me get a look there. Where are they? On the road? Are they on the road?
That's a loss, dog.
They're at home.
Mike, it's a win, and I know it's a win.
Out of your mind. I can't believe you're so crazy. We could do this. By the way, guys, we're available for holidays and other social functions if you want to come out and have some great impressions of popular radio hosts from 30 years ago. Bottom line is, though, when we look over at the Brooklyn Nets schedule, so you said you have those 10 key games that are going to be nationally televised there, but there's 25 in total, and mixed inside of there are just, it's the spectrum. You have your Detroits a couple of times, you have Toronto, and they're just kind of muddling these days. OKC, San Antonio, multiple times in there. You said it there at the top about, listen, it could go the wrong way, where if those other 14, 15 games, if you go, 6 wins out of those 15 very winnable games, well, then all of a sudden it really doesn't matter how you perform against the best teams because you're probably going to be dumpstered. But is there a world where they go 12-3 and then really battle these high profile teams that you'd say, no, we're still in a good position as we hit the deadline?
Oh, sure. I mean, like, you can also just go out and start stomping on teams too. I mean, there's another world where we haven't seen too often with the Nets, which is they actually just go out and take care of business in a huge way and are able to run teams off the court by the fourth quarter. We've never gotten huge tastes of that. I think they have it in their bag for sure. I do think this team actually has a better chance at some of this than some of the other versions of the Nets we've seen. If they're able to stay healthy, always a huge if with this team. They do have personnel that actually does set up a little better to actually run hot in some key areas too, where they are out of these games rather easily. And we saw snippets of it, right? We've seen pieces like that beginning of that Toronto game where it was just, they went absolutely nuclear, right? In the first half of that Toronto game, they let Toronto back in. Toronto's a good team, professional team. They're never going to give up. Those kind of performances against sort of like lesser teams with not as much intestinal fortitude as a team like Toronto, that will just be a 30 point win. I think they have this in their bag, especially if they're able to get Simmons back for minutes. We've already seen Harris's 3-point shooting coming back. Curry's been able to show that at times he can just go, shoot as hot as the sun. And if they're able to just start ramping TJ Warren up to like real 20 minutes or something like that as a secondary scorer, they have 20, 25 point victories in their range of outcomes. Like, that is not in the range of outcomes for all teams. The Nets' current personnel has that in the range of outcomes because they just are deeper with just a little better skill set around what you would need. Because again, like, to blow teams out, you do have to sort of run. You have to play well, but you also have to run hot a little bit. Like, you need to be able to. They need to miss a few shots, a few easy ones. You need to hit some threes. But they have a team built to do that. Like, they have a team that can do that. And I do actually think during this stretch, again, I can't believe I'm being this positive, but like, I think during this stretch, I do think we're going to see some games where it does kind of coalesce and come together. And you're going to see like, they're just going to win by 30. The team's just too good against some of these other lesser teams.
Well, and by the way, I think we talked about, and then as we know, Brooklyn listens to the podcast. They gave some Kevin Durant rest as he was very much needed. But if you blow out some of these teams, that's how you also get through this stretch by doing the both and. Getting Kevin Durant rest so that he is ready for those high-profile matchups when you know he's going to want to go and you're going to want to be able to play him 38, 40 minutes and not really be concerned about the long-term impact on it because you stole 2 or 3 games of rest along the way over what will be these 25 games. So I think that's a big component of it here too. The ramp up you mentioned specifically about around TJ Warren, getting Yuta Watanabe, even though we thought he would come back a little bit to earth, still getting him back out there with consistency and staying away from the injury bug. So you have this deeper rotation of players that can go out and win you some games. Heck, listen, we saw it with Cam Thomas, right? You need him once every 8 games to get thrown in there for 30 minutes and give you a 30-plus point performance. Like, if those boxes can get checked here, because the other thing that I thought about was when you look at it, 25 games, they're 17-12 right now. It's almost, it's like, what is the record that they need to perform to here where you go, hey, it won't matter what happened against those high-profile teams. I struggle to go too far with that because I think if you're dumpstering bad teams and you pick up, I said 12 out of the 15 other games, you pick up those 12 wins, well, you're already at 29. So even losing all the other ones, you're going to be treading water close to 500 at that point, and I don't think it's going to be the case. You'll get some of those wins, but I still think you could go 14-0 maybe, 14-1 against the bad teams. Unless you're monster blowing them out like you're talking about, it's still going to come down to these big games. It's still going to come down to how you look there because that's the ultimate reality, right? Can you compete in the playoffs?
Sorry, I was going to cut you off there, but I will say there's one other thing to add on to that, where if that was,
I powered through you, by the way. Anyway, so
I know you're good. You're a professional, buddy. The most other people would have wilted to me trying to just very rudely.
You anyway,
I insert myself wherever usually, but you don't allow it, and I like that, buddy. That's why you're the host. No. So what I was gonna say was I will say in that scenario, man, this is like the most positive we've ever been. In that scenario, I actually think there is one version where those other big games on the positive side wouldn't matter as much. Would be in a scenario like that where they were like 14-1 all these other games and they were actually like trending toward the 1 or 2 seed in the East. Like at that point, I actually might not even care how much, because like now they're trending toward home court advantage and these other things, right? So like there is that's like the one other step beyond this, like where if they went on some crazy run, right, and we're like moving up the standings in such a way that we're like, holy cow, like the 1 seed is in sight. I think that's gonna be really tough with Milwaukee and Boston up there. So I don't think this is all that likely, but it's not crazy to think about, right? And so if a few things break, right, so there's one other way that this works out where it's like these games actually the stakes get a little lower, is if like it is actually like let's say a 3-team race at the top, and you're getting a home playoff series at least in the first round and maybe the second. Then I actually wonder if the pressure is off in those games a little bit more. But I don't know. I'm just, this is me being so glass half full that it's like almost sickening. I'm gonna need to have.
I'm dangerously close to calling a doctor. Is really what I think needs to happen.
Yeah, I need like some kind of weird positivity intervention, like where someone someone sits down and they're like, "Hey, we need to talk to you about how positive you're being because it's like making everyone feel a little uncomfortable,
a little like, uneasy, little Kool-Aid."
The Nets are gonna be like 14-1 and be like they're gonna be 14-1 and have the 1 seed, and we're actually getting a little worried about what's happening over there.
So coming up in a second, I do want to talk about those high profile games, and then ultimately, I think we're going to be on different sides of what would it mean as you approach that deadline, if it's going well or if it's going poorly potentially. But to your point about if you get one of those top seeds, you feel like you're entrenched there and you lock in having a home series to open up the playoffs and feeling like that's going to be a very winnable series for you. That does exist inside of the Brooklyn Nets mind of win a first round playoff series and maybe feel like you're going to be favored in a second round playoff series. That's success of a different level, but that is success relative to what's gone on the last couple of seasons. So that probably is a part of this as well. And we'll dive into that a little bit further next.
All right, first going to tell you about our friends over at Bet Online, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. If you go to Bet Online right now, you go to NBA, you go to some future odds right here. You go to try to figure out where Kevin Durant is currently sitting 8th, but Steph Curry dealing with a little bit of a shoulder injury. I think we get Durant up here into the 7th. He's a plus 2,500 over at Bet Online. You can also go look at this line. Brooklyn -1 heading into Toronto right now over at Bet Online too. Bet Online is going to give you all the trends, all the latest odds for every professional and amateur league out there. Obviously, pro basketball, pro football, college bowl season around the corner. It's all there at betonline.net, the fastest and easiest way to get all of your betting info. Head on over to the website today to learn more. Bet Online, where the game starts.
Okay, so let's say that we're approaching towards that deadline. And it is funny, too, though, you say about getting themselves maybe into that conversation, the top three, a three-horse race there at the top of the conference. But it's funny because Toronto, Detroit, but then there's the Golden State, the Milwaukee, the Cleveland. You get Atlanta, and you get Charlotte and San Antonio, Chicago, the Pelicans, Miami, Boston. These games are clumped together, even over in the short term. They are clumped together in a way where, like, I don't think they're ever going to escape a handful of those really big matchup games. But as they get towards that deadline, let's say that it's going poorly. And that doesn't mean that it has to be not horrendous. You're beating the bad teams, but in these big matchups, you're kind of getting licked. Or maybe you're just playing like you did against Boston. Not terribly. They didn't have their A game and you lose by 10. As they get to that deadline, do you think that it's more likely that they would make the choice of standing pat if it looked like this wasn't going to be the successful season they wanted it to? And how high up the chain do you think players would be available? There's the low-level guys, and then you get up towards the Joe Harrises and all the way up to the Kyrie Irving level. Where do you think the team would be willing to go if it looked like it was going the wrong way?
Okay, so I think the way things are rolling now, I don't think the Durant thing is even on the table, which is good.
No.
Right. So I think it actually have to go really, really south for the Durant thing to come back on the table. And there's almost like not enough time for that to happen, which is good. Right. So like we might run out.
Godsend.
So I'm getting serious though. Like in some ways, it's only 2 months now. It's less than 2 months to the deadline and things are good now. So it would have to be so bad for 2 months for him to re-put in for that trade request. I think that I don't actually think that's on the table. Kind of no matter what. It might be something they revisit in the offseason if it goes bad, but I don't think pre-deadline we're in that mode. So I think actually from a starting point, I don't think that's on the table.
But by the way, 25 games, 15-10, regardless of how you comprise it. They're up over 30 wins. They're going to be what? 32,
yeah, they're in the playoffs.
24. Yeah, you know what I mean? Right. And the numbers are too strong to say we ever consider giving up.
I think there's almost every scenario points to them being a buyer here in some form or fashion, just because I think the schedule lines up in such a way, because basically what we just said was like, they have 25 games here. We gave you all the good ones. All the other games pretty much are pretty easy. Like depending on what you think of the Indianas and the Utahs of the world, the Nets are going to be favored in all those games. So let's just put it that way. The Nets will be favored in every single one of those games, barring a health catastrophe. So even if you just prognosticate based on probably like future odds, you'd have to be positive about it. Now things can happen. I'm just using that as the litmus. So I think almost any version of this over this time is them being some kind of buyer. Now the type of buyer probably is that's where it probably changes a little bit. I don't think they have enough for like any kind of all-in move anyway. So they did that already with Harden. So the ship has sailed on them really having the assets to make any kind of major splash. So I think any addition would be probably pretty minor. And I know Nets fans don't really want to hear that. I just don't think they have really enough assets. I think what the Nets probably envision is probably figuring out some way they can get some stretch big-ish out of this, right? Not a Miles Turner. I actually don't even think he's going to be available. Not a guy like that. Some guy that they can play like 15 to 20 minutes in the regular season and then probably gets buried in the playoffs, something like that. But just like just marginal uptick and maybe just like a break glass in case of emergency to like a guy like Claxton in the playoffs, right? Some kind of backup, just some backup, like something like that. I don't know who that would be exactly. But I don't think they have the pieces, but I also think that they'll probably try to upgrade. But I think the Nets probably view themselves as something like our best upgrade is having everyone get healthy and realize the peak of whatever the potential is, right? Sometimes that is just your move. Your move is keep getting better as you're currently constructed. And the Nets have the pieces for that. Like Simmons at 35 minutes playing Ben Simmons basketball is a massive upgrade. Like
Right.
TJ Warren playing 22 minutes at 75% of what he was 2 years ago is a massive upgrade.
Yep.
Joe Harris and Seth Curry just regressing to their career averages from 3-point land is a massive upgrade. Like they already have places that this team can get better, just that are already currently sitting on the roster. So I actually, in some ways, think that that's the best upgrade that the team can make is just to reach the logical conclusion that everyone thought these guys would be at. I know everyone wants to bring in like Mo Bamba for whatever reason, but like I just see this roster as close, not probably all the way there, but close. And if some of these guys just do some of the things that were expected of them before, the team can look 15% better than they do now. I think pretty easily. Like I think that's one of the most realistic outcomes on the positive side.
Yeah. So that is where I agree with you. Like, I think that in the margins, and maybe I would even say it's like, if I want to safeguard against Nicholas Claxton or Ben Simmons, I would find ways the way that they do it, in that game where they gave everyone rest. Cam Thomas plays a little more. Day'Ron Sharp gets a game and gives you a double because he's capable of doing it.
Yeah, but they need like someone a little more functional. Like they need someone better.
Yeah. And you want someone that like you can rely on with consistency and not kind of do a coin flip going into those games when you want to safeguard against injuries. But I agree with you that I think the best outcome, or the highest level outcome where they're rolling well here to the deadline, is going to be that they stand pat because they made the moves in the offseason. They already sacrificed a lot of capital, and you and I have talked consistently about loving Joe Harris in his role on this team. There's some little things, like sometimes I ponder on, as good as Seth Curry is because of his size relative to if TJ Warren starts to continue to expand his minute workload, if Yuta Watanabe shows enough consistency, is there a marginal move you could make for your backcourt by using Curry? Like, that's one that I sometimes play around with, but I'd be fine if they just said, hey, we made a few moves in this offseason, Edmund Sumner and TJ Warren and Ben Simmons playing. That is the roster, and that's what we're living with for the rest of the season. I'd be fine with that on the positive side. The negative side, though, and I think it's going to be far harder to get to the negative with the way they've been trending right now. However, in those 10 big time matchups that they have, if they go 3-7 in those, and the other 15 games, if they go 10-5 in the other 15, or 9-6, I do think it at least brings into the spectrum of what do we think we are this season? Because remember, we're talking 25 games from now. So if by 25 games from now, when you come up against, as you get into February, when you play Boston on February 1st, when you play the Clippers on February 6th, right? When you go and play these teams, even January 25th against Philadelphia, if you're not going and getting those wins, and they could be dogfights, you could even lose nail biters, it's still fine. But if you don't look like you're capable of going the distance in a 7-game series against those teams, I think it could push you in the direction of saying, hey, if somebody wanted to come knock about a Curry or a Joe Harris, we might be willing to listen in a way that we otherwise wouldn't. And obviously the caveat is the Nets are healthy when they get to that place.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think that I just only think that is like such a weird needle to thread that I think that like, I don't think they'd ever be sellers in that situation, because I actually think from the Durant standpoint, that would actually be hard to sell. Like, it's like, oh, we're going to be sellers, like even mini sellers on a team that is going to make the playoffs with Kevin Durant. Like, I actually don't think you can ever be in that place. I just think that you don't have to be buyers. They already tried the buyer part. They got, they bought on DeAndre Jordan and they bought on James Harden, right? Like, they've already been buyers in these situations. It hasn't worked out for all these guys. So they tried the buyer piece. I don't think with Kevin Durant on the team, you can even be mini sellers though, because I think that would actually signal an end to him wanting out. Like, right. Like, I think you can probably find a way to stave off another trade request by just being competitive with the team you have. But I think if I'm hearing you right, if you start by selling off even like some functional pieces because you're like, oh, we don't stand a chance. I think that is hard to go into a guy like Durant and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. And we do a reset. Cause I don't think they have too many resets left in them here, but I do think they have let's go to war with what we have and see how we go. And maybe we catch lightning in a bottle and maybe we can get through a couple 7-game series, even if it looks not great in the regular season. I don't think they can swap off or spare parts when they're still probably going to make the playoffs. I think that would be the wrong way to go, because I think in the end, even if we thought the team wasn't built functionally to be one of the top 4 championship contenders, let's say, which is kind of where you need to be heading into the playoffs odds wise, I still think it's worth it to, like, you just don't know what happens to other teams. Like, if you go back a couple years ago with the Suns and Bucks, when just like every single dude got hurt in the playoffs, right? Like AD was out. I'm gonna go. The Kawhi was out. Like everyone was hurt that year. The Nets were all hurt that year. I forgot. I buried the lead. The Nets were the most hurt team. Right. You just don't know what can happen in the playoffs, and at that point, you can catch lightning in a bottle on like how things kind of break your way. So I think I would just at that point stand pat.
The other thing too, and we're going to wrap up here, and I think I mostly agree with you, right? Because again, like, hey KD, you've played the first half of the season, you given us everything you got. Now we're going to start easing you back over the back half of this year. We're going to go from you're still going to be a playoff team at that point of the deadline. Now we're going to slowly pull ourselves back from being a playoff team and think about what we'll do going to next year. I
think they're too good. Like they actually just have too much talent. Like they can't get there. I was going to say, by the way, you have to
really strip the team to get to that place, and that's something that's really hard to do, as you say, with Kevin Durant. But something that I just we'll touch on this as we get towards the deadline, because it'll be more clarified at that point. It'll either be a complete non-story or it'll be a very interesting storyline. Has nothing to do with Kyrie Irving, the talent, but knowing that he is in a walk year, and knowing that if he were to leave in the offseason, the Nets do not just get that money dollar for dollar to play with based on where they are from a cap standpoint. That is actually a very important decision they need to make here. And maybe they already made that choice coming into this year with Kevin Durant. But that's actually a fascinating part of this based on how they feel about their team and their chances to be competitive in the playoffs, because you're not going to be able to functionally replace that talent in the offseason were he not to return.
Oh, it's easily the biggest Nets subplot that really we haven't talked about too much because of other stuff. And we'll probably just kick this can down the road because I actually don't think there's anything to be done with it right now. But you're right, man. Like, this is actually the biggest story for the Nets. I don't think it's even close. I mean, besides like Durant asking out again or something like that. Like after that, there's no bigger story than what you do with Kyrie. It's a weirdest, craziest spot they're in here with Kyrie, and especially like if he continues to play basically like he's playing now, it's gonna be so fascinating to see what happens. So anyway, we'll talk about that one. That one, I'm sure we're gonna get lots of miles out of that, because there's gonna be a lot of different things that can happen here that are gonna make this. But I just don't want to undersell it. We haven't talked too much about it. You and I think we said about this on YouTube there, and we'll get out of here. But like, you and I talked about trying to think of ways to actually talk about this situation where we just laid it all out. It didn't, and it ended up just kind of not making sense with the timing. But it's really fascinating. Like I don't know, man. This could go in so many different directions. This is it will be a sliding doors moment for the Nets for sure.
And that's just acknowledging it on the podcast now to say we know it exists.
Oh, it's just of course.
What could we? It's really hard to determine or try to analyze it at this point. So we'll see where it goes from here. In the meantime, 25 games and 10 major dates on the slate between now and the deadline that I do think will just at the very least tell us where this team is when it comes to high level playoff basketball.
All right, here's a number you need to know: 150. That is how many subscribers we are away from
Christmas,
YouTube,
Doug,
to get to 4,000. Give a little Christmas present. It's totally free. You go over to Locked On Nets YouTube. You hit subscribe. You don't have to do anything else. That's giving a Christmas present to us. That's gifting us something. It costs you nothing. This is where I like to be with my wife and kids. Giving them something costs me nothing. You can do that for us by just clicking subscribe to Locked On Nets YouTube. Get us to 4,000 before Christmas. That's all we're asked. Just go like and subscribe over on YouTube, Locked On Nets.
We will never surrender. We will win or we will die. And don't think it stops there. You will have the next generation to fight, and after the next and the next. As for me, I will live longer than my hangman. Why, that's Anthony Quinn.
I don't know. Okay. R.I.P. I'm not sure. There we go.
No, he's an actor. I think he's around. He's okay.
Okay, well, there you go. One of the all-time great poets. We will be back again tomorrow. No, next week, talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.